Legends, welcome back. Always want to do that. Yo, Trump and Republicans in Congress eye an ambitious 100-day agenda starting with tax cuts. Republicans swept to power on Election Day and now control the House, the Senate, and the White House with plans for an ambitious 100-day agenda come January. Okay, look. That Republican lead in the House and the Senate is not as real as you might think. First off, it is paper thin in the House. And then secondly, in the Senate, we got a lead of 53 out of 100. And 4 of those Republicans are never Trump Republicans that have already expressed disdain for the coming agenda. Okay, so off bat, let's take that lead in both areas with a grain of salt. Okay, because we might still have to make some compromises in terms of getting change done. Yo, this is post-video Chromo here for a second, asking you guys to please like and subscribe because apparently that's going to help, and I always forget to do that. So please like and subscribe. All right, thank you so much, guys. Let's get into the article. A tax break for millionaires and almost everyone else. An end to the COVID-19 government subsidies that some Americans have used to purchase health insurance. Limits to food stamps, including for women and children, and other safety net programs. Rollbacks to the Biden-era green energy programs. Mass deportation. Government job cuts to drain the swamp. Okay, first off, the mass deportations we talked about yesterday. That's not even true, the framing that they're using. ICE has already got lists of millions of felons and violent criminals that the DAs that either have not been caught in this country or have been caught multiple times by police, and then the DAs in their cities, these sanctuary cities, keep letting them go while they escalate their criminal patterns. Bro, no, it's not mass deportations. It's not families and innocent men and women being separated from their children, bro. It's not some fascist nightmare. It's a complete lie. It's a media framing device. They're being dishonest, bro, okay? And then the government job cuts to drain the swamp. We've got so much mission creep when it comes to government and roles in government that are redundant and don't do anything and are really just there because people want to hire their nepo babies, or you've got favoritism in the workplace that's going on, nepotism, you know what I mean? And so you know, government job cuts are necessary. We need to reduce the size of our government immensely right now. It's gotten so large. We have a $2 trillion a year deficit. Something needs to be done about that, y'all. So absolutely, deportations, government job cuts, focus on the criminals and the felons and the people that the DAs have been releasing over and over again. Let's make these cities safer. And then, let's reduce the government redundancy. Let's maximize our efficiency and streamline our federal government, dude. Our federal government is there to manage disputes really between the states. Our states should be the places where we're looking for to make that social change. Decentralize authority. Decentralize that power. Having won the election and sweeping to power, Republicans are planning an ambitious 100-day agenda with President-elect Donald Trump in the White House and GOP lawmakers in a congressional majority to accomplish their policy goals. Atop the list is a plan to renew some $4 trillion in expiring GOP tax cuts, a signature domestic achievement of Trump's first term, and an issue that may define his return to the White House. And it's also something that Biden continued. Let's not forget. So it's not as partisan of an issue as people call it. Biden continued those same tax cuts for a reason. What we're focused on right now is being ready day one, said House Majority Leader Steve Scalise after meeting recently with GOP colleagues to map out the road ahead. The policies emerging will revive long-running debates about America's priorities, its gapping income inequalities, and the proper size and scope of its government, especially in the face of mounting federal deficits now approaching $2 trillion a year. That's right, I just said that, bro. And then what else? How much was it the CIA that just failed their most recent audit again? And how much were they short by? So we're $2 trillion a year. And we're how many trillions in deficit right now? And how much of that money are our literal intelligence agencies just losing money in a black hole? What are they doing with it? honestly, bro, like they're doing things all over the world. They already get black money. We already know they get black money because we learned from Freeway Ricky Ross and the drug trade and the arms trade that they're involved in and all the guns that go missing, the ATF, right? We got the ATF gun running too. So we already know our government's involved in illegal shit. Okay, so we already know that the CIA is pulling in black money from all types of stuff, right? So, bro, so we already know they're pulling in money from the side, and then we're paying them money from our taxpayers, and that's disappearing into a black hole. And I'm pretty sure, wasn't it $2.2 trillion that they were short by? So it's like where is I think that a lot of the money that we're facing and a lot of these deficits come from corruption, come from nepotism, and are a lot more concentrated than people might make them out to be, and would be a lot easier to approach and get rid of if we had the balls to approach this entrenched deep state. I mean, the CIA has blackmail operations on so many people. Like, dude, think about it, man. I mean, people have to have balls. Some of these people that are being blackmailed by the CIA are going to have the cojones to just put up with the backlash because, dude, a world without these people is better than a future with them. You see what I'm saying? Like, dude, like at some point, things are going to get so bad in this neo-feudal technocratic era that we're building with these digital IDs and these medical passports and all this stuff. At some point, it's going to get so bad that it's going to feel like living in a prison even when you're not. And at that point, I hope people make the calculation whether or not they're blackmailed to step out and say something, bro. These policies emerging will revive long-running debates about America's priorities, its gapping income inequalities, the proper size and scope of 2 trillion deficits, right? The discussion will test whether Trump and his Republican allies can achieve the kinds of real-world outcomes wanted or needed or supported when voters gave the party control of the White House and Congress. Absolutely. We gave them a mandate, and that mandate came with conditions, okay? What we want, a resurgence to classical liberal values. We want economic nationalism. We want an end to the wars abroad. We want peace in the world so we don't have to stress about nuclear warfare coming home, or terrorists trying to make it over the border, or people upset trying to start wars with us because of some shit we did in the past, bro. We want peace and stability, both economically and geopolitically and internally in our domestic politics, man. We want a reduce in our extremism. We want a reduce in tensions, bro. Conservatives too. People think conservatives are extremists. We're not, guys. We're not. Conservatives have not changed since the 80s, dude. And I used to think of myself as a liberal, and it was Obama's second term. It was his first term. By the second term, I had shifted and I was already disaffected. But it was his first term. All this that made me realize all types of things. It made me realize there was no difference in foreign policy between the left or the right. It made me realize who the uniparty establishment was. And really, by 2012, I was full Ron Paul, yelling Ron Paul out the car with the bumper sticker and everything. You know what I'm saying? Like full Ron Paul. And then after Ron Paul lost, I was like, man, I think I was 22. And I was like, Ron Paul lost, I was 18, right? And I realized, bro, third parties are literally just a magnet, a black hole for anyone who wants to apply critical thinking to the political atmosphere, right? So at that same time that I realized that, there was this whole movement of libertarians to move into the Republican Party, take over the Republican Party and rip it from the rhinos. And so we entered the Republican Party and we started making moves and juking. And bro, that's why we saw in 2016 a whole shift in from the era of Obama, when Mitt Romney was running as the Republican candidate, to Trump as the Republican candidate, right? Mitt Romney was the Republican neoliberalism, which is, hey, buddy, we're going to make a bunch of money. There's going to be opportunities to keep moving businesses overseas. The stock market's going to keep bumping. We're going to make tons, bro. And a shift to classical liberalism, which is more of economic nationalism, which is using tariffs to protect your trade at home and incentivizing and de-incentivizing businesses from moving overseas, right? Like there's so many things. That's the same reason why Bernie Sanders was really successful with that same economic nationalist message, because it promotes economic stability. It promotes financial stability. Dude, there's a reason why the establishment pushes one thing and populists push another, right? The discussion will test whether Trump and his Republican allies can achieve the kinds of real-world outcomes wanted or needed when they get given control of the White House. The past is really the prologue here, said Lindsay Owens, executive director of the Groundwork Collaborative, recalling the 2017 tax debate. Trump's first term became defined by those tax cuts, which were approved by Republicans in Congress and signed into law only after their initial campaign promise to repeal and replace Democrat President Barack Obama's health care law sputtered, failing with the famous thumbs down vote by John McCain. First off, that is not why they focus on tax cuts. That was always a part of the campaign to begin with. It was a multifaceted campaign. The narrative that they're pushing here is trying to pretend like the campaign Trump ran in 2016 was a single issue campaign on repealing Obamacare. Well, that doesn't even make any sense. There were so many issues from rampant crime to our jobs going overseas, to our trade deficits worldwide, to our immigration issues. I mean, there were so many issues that were created by corporatism and neoliberalism that people were interested in approaching, to try to reduce it to one thing and to try to claim that the tax cuts were some sort of like, oopsie, I'm sorry, no, we're still Republican, that's not what was happening at all, bro. The manipulation and the framing devices that they try to use to create an impression in your mind is wild when you start breaking it down piece by piece and you realize it's in every other sentence. The GOP majority in Congress quickly pivoted to tax cuts, assembling and approving a multi-trillion dollar package by the year's end. In the time spent since Trump signed those tax cuts into law, big benefits have accrued to higher income households. The top 1%, those making nearly $1 million and above, received a $60,000 tax cut, while those with lower incomes got as little as a few $100s, according to the Tax Policy Center and some other groups. Well, that would make sense if it's a percentage-based tax cut. I mean, if somebody's making $1 billion a year and somebody's making $50,000 a year, there's going to be a massive proportional difference in the percentage and how much money that percentage represents. So another framing device that they use to try to frame Trump as some sort of corporatist. Now, I'm not saying the jury isn't out. To me, the jury's out. Trump might be a corporatist. He had the excuse during his first term of not understanding the way the world worked, okay? Apparently. Not understanding fully the way politics worked, apparently. Even though he ran his campaign on fully understanding the way politics worked. So, he has that excuse, right? And this now, the second term, is where we see, is he a corporatist? Is this second term used exclusively for neoliberal Republican agenda? Was this just corporate? Was this just marketing? The classical liberalism just marketing? Are we just going to get thrown some bones? Or are we going to have a real Pat Buchanan style resurgence? You know what I mean? That's a good question. Is Donald Trump going to carry that Ron Paul, Pat Buchanan torch? That's a good question. The big economic story in the U.S. is soaring income inequality, said Owens. And that's actually, interestingly, a tax story. No, it's not. This is the main reason why I wanted to approach this article. No, income inequality is not governed by the progressive tax brackets. This article is trying to now create some sort of framing around progressive taxes and our progressive tax system like it's designed to manage income inequality. First off, when our tax system was passed in 1913, the idea was that the top 1% are not paying their share into infrastructure repair and infrastructure development. Okay? It had nothing to do with income equality. In fact, back then, during the point that we were at, in the industrial age, in the industrial revolution, there was more income inequality then than there is now. So this whole narrative, like daddy government are who manages income inequality, is a neoliberal socialist narrative. I mean, it's literal like communist activism. Dude. And the idea, first off, income inequality is managed through market systems, okay, and working on the systems in the market that add to inflation and make it more difficult for people in the lower classes to enter industries as a small business. And the way that you approach income inequality specifically is by addressing class mobility. You reduce income inequality when you increase class mobility. What is class mobility? Class mobility is someone's ability to move from the lower classes to the middle and upper class, okay? And that is established by reducing entries into the market, the cost of entry into the market, right? So you reduce the cost of entry for things like starting your own business. You reduce the regulatory burden for small businesses. You add monopoly and trust protections. So that way, when a business gets super big, it can't take that massive amount of money that it generated and use it to create a monopoly in the market by buying up other businesses in the supply chain, or use it to form some sort of trust where them and other corporations are able to act as gatekeepers in that industry. Dude, that is how you maintain income equality, by capping the big players and removing the caps from the small players. That's how you reduce income inequality. This whole system that they're trying to promote here, where you centralize the management of income inequality to systems of government, how could you ever trust government to manage income inequality when government, over the past 100 years, democide has been the largest killer of people, death by government? Okay, that's one. Second, there's a revolving door between corporate interest and government. So how could you trust government to manage income inequality when there's a revolving door between the people who would be managing that income inequality and the very executives of the largest corporations who are promoting that income inequality? That doesn't even make any sense. Like, when you think about it, it makes no sense. Like, dude, you make sure that no one can get that big through ensuring that they can't use their money to further entrench their position. I actually have an entire alternative economic platform on my website, itschromo.com, if you guys are interested. And it's all about an economic system that takes that reduces the cost of entry into the market while managing the social responsibility of a business and to its community as it gets larger, right? And that involves things like tax relief for sole proprietorships and small business, right? That involves tax incentives for hiring locally or sourcing locally from your own town, the resources, right? Because oftentimes you're looking for the cheapest place you can get it. And because you can get things shipped cheaply, you end up sending your money to somewhere that's not your own community. The way you generate wealth is by circulating that money within your community and keeping that money in your community for as long as possible. So the real way to generate wealth for everybody is through incentivizing that type of system. And so you've got tax breaks for small businesses and sole proprietorships, and regulatory breaks for small businesses and sole proprietorships that make it easier for individuals to enter the market. You want to make it easier for an individual to enter the market than it would be for the competitor, for the big business that would be that small individual's competitor, to engage in market manipulation moves that would then prevent them from entering the market, right? And then as a business gets bigger, as they get bigger, it involves legal responsibilities to your community, right? That are paid not in the form of taxes, but paid in the form of contributions to local community incubators, right? So these would be community incubators that are managed by boards that have both community members and members from the corporations that are putting in here. And those community boards are then looking at entrepreneurs that are maybe looking for businesses that require some funding, and they're incubators for these small businesses that then these incubators would replace internal research and development, right? Because a lot of these companies then start using, when they get big, they use their research and development money to then try to innovate faster than the rest of the market to further entrench their position, and it creates a cycle, right? And so you prevent that cycle by taking that R&D and that research and development and decentralizing it from the internally in that company to being a community project where entrepreneurs who have ideas can then vie for roles or vie for opportunities or grants or loans to then experiment with those ideas in the market, right? And then I've got systems in place to prevent people from taking advantage of that, right? Because it's a community version of the Silicon Valley venture capitalist funding that we have right now, and a lot of people scam those venture capitalists and those firms by basically starting businesses that sound nice but are impossible to ever get to be profitable at the end of the day. And so I've got systems in place to prevent people from taking advantage. Please take a look at that economic system, because it is a whole revolutionary economic system. I also have an idea for a decentralized education system and a decentralized system of governance. And so all three are designed to work together to empower individuals, increase class mobility, and then as someone enters the upper middle class, it starts taking their money, the extra money from their businesses. There's no income tax. There's no taxes on individuals. What happens is businesses and corporations end up paying money into the community, not through taxes, through community trusts, community funds, community incubators that are designed to handle research and development, handle repair and infrastructure building, and all types of things, guys. I have a whole decentralized education system that allows people to learn the skills that they need to then start these businesses a lot easier. And I have a whole decentralized governance system that all are designed to work together to increase class mobility and increase and maximize the level of freedom and the voice that somebody has in their community, while limiting large players' ability to control and monopolize spaces and gatekeep. Please look into it, guys. I'm so excited when I come up with this stuff. I would love for you guys to tell me what you think about it. But let's see. In preparation for Trump's return, Republicans in Congress have been meeting privately for months with President-elect to go over proposals to extend and enhance those tax breaks, some of which would otherwise expire in 2025. That means keeping in place various tax brackets and a standardized deduction for individual earners, along with existing rates for so-called pass-through entities such as law firms, doctors' offices, or businesses that takes their earnings as individual income. Typically, a price tag for the tax cuts would be prohibitive. The Congressional Office Budget estimates that keeping the expiring provisions would add an additional $4 trillion into deficits over a decade. Okay, sure, those tax cuts might add to the $4 trillion in deficits, but you're not calculating when they're trying to present that as irresponsible. They're not calculating the amount of the deficit that is government waste. That is the real issue. The real issue is government waste. The real issue is not, oh my God, the taxpayers aren't paying us enough money to make up for all the redundancy in our government and all the wasted money that we spend. Are you kidding me? Dude, no. Save the money, save the taxpayers' money, and then take that money out of government redundancy. Absolutely. What a joke. Adding to that, Trump wants to include his own priorities into the tax package, including lowering the corporate tax rate, which is now at 21% from the 2017 law, to 15%, and doing away with individual taxes on tips and overtime pay. I think it was to 15% originally and then bumped up to 21% in 2020. I could be totally wrong. But Avik Roy, president of the Foundation for Research on Equal Opportunity, said blaming tax cuts for the nation's income inequality is just nonsense because tax filers up and down the income ladder benefited. Instead, he points to other factors, including the Federal Reserve's historically low interest rates that enable borrowing and including for the wealthy on the cheap. That is another issue. It's true. I'm not saying that I think we should have less borrowing of money in general in our economy, and having a debt-based economy is so wrong to begin with. We need to have competition for our money supply. There should be multiple Federal Reserves. The one century in our country where our dollar actually increased in value, there was multiple Federal Reserves competing for printing the dollar. Okay, so the real issue is the power that the Federal Reserve has over the production of our money supply. And if you guys don't realize, the Federal Reserve is a private bank that simply has a charter to operate. So first off, that's wrong to begin with. And secondly, it also creates a debt-based economy. And that is counterproductive in so many ways. And in reality, I believe that was pumped by neoliberals in order to reduce our sovereignty by strapping us with debt that we don't have a hope of getting out of, okay? So first off, they are mislabeling the solution to the issue, all right? Yes, rich people can disproportionately benefit from those lower interest rates. Absolutely. And yes, it allows them to further entrench their position. They're not incorrect about that. But that framing of the argument is another neoliberal way of framing the argument that focuses on the assumption that the centralization of power is the answer and doesn't even approach the idea of how decentralizing this authority of controlling our money supply can assist, because there could be another bank that has a charter to produce notes that can come in and compete and offer a lower interest rate and create competitive market incentives here, okay, that can benefit us as consumers. But off the bat, we need to get rid of a debt-based economy, because it does allow for it allows for the rich to leverage their assets, which off the bat gives them a disproportionate level of financial access, okay? Americans don't care if Elon Musk is rich, Royce said. What they care about is what you are doing to make their lives better. Typically, lawmakers want the cost of a policy change to be offset by budget revenue or reductions elsewhere. Absolutely. Like we were talking about earlier. Yep, take it elsewhere. But that doesn't mean you use that as an excuse to prevent saving the taxpayer money. No. Cut the money, save the taxpayer money, and use that new deficit as a fire under your ass to go then find that money somewhere in government. But in this case, there's almost no agreed upon revenue raisers or spending cuts in the annual $6 trillion budget that could cover such a whopping price tag. I understand. I do understand the concern with that. Instead, some Republicans have argued that the tax breaks will pay for themselves with the trickle-down revenue from political economic growth. Trump's tariffs floated this past week could provide another source of offsetting revenue. Some Republicans argue that there's a precedent for simply extending the tax cuts without offsetting the cost because they are not new changes but existing federal policy. If you're just extending the current law, we're not raising taxes or lowering them, said Mike Crapo, or Idaho, the incoming chairman of the Senate Finance Committee on Fox News. He said the criticism that the tax cuts would add to the deficit is ridiculous. There is a difference between taxes and spending, he said, and we're just going to have to get that message out to America. Absolutely right. That's exactly what I'm talking about, and he just said it in fewer words. At the same time, the new Congress will also be considering spending reductions, particularly to food stamps and healthcare programs goals long sought by conservatives as part of the annual appropriations process. One cut is almost certain to fall on the COVID-19 era subsidy that helps defray the cost of health insurance for people who buy their own policies via the Affordable Care Act exchange. The extra healthcare subsidies were extended through 2025 in Democrat President Joe Biden's Inflation Reduction Act, which also includes various green energy tax breaks that Republicans want to roll back. Yeah, also the Inflation Reduction Act, I believe, created like a permanent quantitative easing system where whenever the Federal Reserve wants, it can decide that there are economic conditions where it needs to just start printing money. I could be misremembering and conflating two different things, but I'm pretty sure. The House Democratic leader, Rep. Hakeem Jeffries in New York, scoffed at the Republican claim that they've won some big, massive mandate, when in fact the House and Democrat and Republicans essentially fought to a draw in the November election, with the GOP eking out a narrow majority, as we just talked about in the beginning. Yep, that's basically what happened. That's true. This notion about some of the mandate to make massive far-right extreme policy changes. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist, Jeffrey said. Well, I think some of these runoff elections, well, not runoff, some of these elections that ran off on and on and on out in California and some of these other states in Arizona, I think they need to be looked at as to why 99.9% of the vote was basically in, and then all of a sudden you got the Dem jumping up by 32 votes, bro. Republicans are planning to use a budgetary process called reconciliation that allows majority passage in Congress, essentially along party lines, without the threat of a filibuster in the Senate that can stall a bill's advance unless 60 of the senators agree. It's the same process Democrats have used when they had power in Washington to approve the Inflation Reduction Act and Obama's health care law over GOP objections. And it's interesting that they used that to approve the health care law, and then the Supreme Court came in and backed it up and said, no, it's locked in, it's locked in, it's locked in, it's locked in, you can't do nothing. What is that, bro? That's not how our system of government is meant to work. Republicans have been here before with Trump in control of Congress, which is no guarantee they will be able to accomplish their goals, particularly in the face of resistance from Democrats and never Trump Republicans, which now there are way less never Trump Republicans than there were last time. Still, House Speaker Mike Johnson, who's been working closely with Trump on the agenda, has promised a breakneck pace in the first 100 days because we have a lot to fix. I'm glad Mike Johnson is getting the message, bro. I don't trust you, dog, but I'm glad you're getting the message, bro. Anyway, this was a long one. There was a lot to respond here. I had a lot that I kind of wanted to approach and kind of like share with you guys about on this. I'm still working on being more focused in my dialogue. I just improv with it, guys, you know. So I appreciate you. Thank you so much for joining me. I got another segment coming for you guys, trying to keep the hustle going because it's keeping the growth going. So hey, thank you so much, legends. I'll see you on the next one. All right, peace.